Hey guys, Bailey here with a video all about the gear that I bring on my backpacking trips when I'm hiking with my dogs. Generally speaking, I've been going backpacking once or twice a month these days, in addition to the thru hikes that we've been doing over the summers. With that in mind, I feel like we have our gear pretty dialed down at this point, so maybe this will give some other people tips and ideas. To start, I'm going to go through the gear that I use just for the dogs on pretty much every backpacking trip and thru hiking. It's gear that I would not necessarily bring if I was hiking without them. So I bring a water/food bowl. I have two because I have two dogs, but I use them for food and water. They're interchangeable. I don't have like separate bowls. The only exception would be if I'm hiking in grizzly country. Skittles really likes to drink most of her water at night. So like when we were hiking in Alaska over the summer, I made sure that I had a designated water bowl to have out at night so it didn't smell like food when we were camping at grizzly country. I will say for me, I have several different bowls. I have a rough wear bowl. I have like a collapsible rubber bowl. I have like one of the rough wear trail running bowls. I really don't have a very strong preference on the type of dog bowl. To me, the weight is all pretty similar. They all function fairly the same. So I wouldn't get too hung up on the type of bowl. I used to have Dyneema bowls and they just kind of started to leak out over time. I don't think it makes a huge difference. I do like the collapsible rubber bowls for water just because they won't leak overnight. Most of the fabric bowls will wet out eventually, especially if you use them enough, so that's just maybe something to keep in mind. I also have my throw quilt that I've had for a long time. My current ones are the black diamond ones that Costco used to sell. There are plenty of similar products that you can find on Amazon or online. Basically, it's just a rectangular like down-filled quilt that I just bring and I throw it out for the dogs to sleep on at night in the tent. It just provides a little bit of extra warmth and also protects the bottom of the tent when I'm not using a dog-specific sleeping pad. I also always bring dog boots even if I don't think I'm going to need them, just for emergencies. For example, there's plenty of times where Skittles has gone hundreds of miles without needing them, but they're just good to have in case she gets a paw laceration or the terrain is especially rugged. Of course, Prima always pretty much needed boots on any trip longer than just a couple of days. Brix is pretty young, so he hasn't really needed them yet, but I bring them anyways. They're just really nice to have, especially where I hike in the Southwest. It's just really rugged and hard on their feet, especially when we're hiking like down in Arizona and that kind of thing. So for boot brands, I have not really found anything that I'm super passionate about yet. I will make a boot specific video on what I learned from testing. It kind of depends on how you're using them really. For emergency boots, I do like mushing boots just because they're super lightweight and they pack down small and they're really cheap. But they also are not very durable, so if you're using them for day-to-day hiking, I would maybe pick something else unless you're hiking in snow. For more durable boots, I do like the Nonstop Dog Wear Protector boots. I like some of the rubber bottom boots like the Arcadia Trail boots from PetSmart. I've had good luck with those. The rough wear ones are fine. They rub their dew claws. And then even the wag wellies I like quite a bit. I'm not gonna go into much more detail on this video, but if you wanna know more about dog boots, then I'll put a link up once I have that video made. Along those lines, I also usually try to bring Paw Wax. Here in the Southwest, it's really dry and arid and rocky, and it just dries out their pads really quick, which is part of what makes them foot sore. I try to bring it and put it on just at night, and then it kind of helps just keep their feet supple and from cracking. I bring this even on weekend trips these days just because of where I am hiking. You know, if I was hiking in the Southeast, it might be a different story. I might not bring that on every overnight trip. For Paw Wax brands, again, I don't have a super specific brand that I'm super passionate about. The nice thing about Musher Secret is it has a screw top lid so it doesn't leak when it melts, but really any sort of beeswax waste Paw Balm works just fine. The next thing I've been bringing is a toy or a bone or both, mostly for Brix. Prima also liked her toys. Of course, this is kind of like a dog luxury item. However, it makes them really happy. It's nice to have, especially because we're going a little bit slower right now since Brix is still growing. It's just nice to have that bone in the tent, so if he is still kind of amped up, then he can chew it and have something to do when we're in camp. I also bring poop bags. I'm going to talk about the trowel later on, but I mostly have them for at the trailheads or if we're in town. Even on a weekend trip, you just never know. It's just nice to have in your bag, even if you don't think you're really going to use them. Of course, anytime you're traveling with a dog, you need a collar and a leash. Brix, being a puppy, has a special hiking collar that's a little different. When we're hiking, it just has all of his information on it. Skittles I'm a little less worried about, so she just has her house collar. And then I have ultralight dog hiking leashes that I've made. It's nice just because it's easy to carry, it's easy to wrap up, it's really strong. It's geared more towards hiking off leash when you don't need a leash super often, so you can stow it away easily, but it's still strong enough to use and easy to clip on the dog. However, really any leash will do. When Brix was younger and was on the leash much more often, I just used like a long leather lead. People use biothane leads, whatever works best for your dog. Another thing that I've been using for my dogs is a Bearbell. I want to be clear that I do not actually use this for bears. I have been in some places where people actually say it attracts bears. I've never had that problem. I use it so that I can hear where my dog's at. Skittles used to wear the bell when it was her and Prima, mostly because she's just so small that if we'd be like bushwhacking or something or hiking off trail, I had a hard time keeping track of her because I was just trying to make my own path through tall grasses and down trees and whatever. And so it allowed me to hear where she was at behind me. Also, most of the time, she just walks behind me anyways on trails. She likes to stop and sniff things, so it lets me know if she stops that I should probably look behind me and check. Now that we have Brix, Skittles is definitely the more reliable dog. He's still in training, so we've been having him wear the Bearbell while he's still learning so that we can keep track of him and make sure that he's doing all the things he's supposed to be doing. Next up is something that I only recently started carrying, and it's a sweater for Skittles. In the past, she hasn't really needed one, but since her hair has been falling out due to some health issues, we've been bringing it along and putting it on her at night just to give her some extra warmth. Obviously, if your dog has extremely short hair, this could be an option, but it's not normally something that I've been carrying the last few years. So Skittles sweater isn't necessarily anything special. It's just a sweater that we got at the dollar spot at Target when that used to be a thing once upon a time. It was actually for my childhood dog, and it's just kind of lived on. You could use fancy hiking specific sweaters, but really any sort of bargain sweater, I think especially for a smaller dog, works fine. If you have a bigger dog, I know some people will use down vests for like humans and use that on their dog if you have a short hair dog. So it just really depends on the size of your dog and the purpose of the sweater. Likewise, we've been bringing an extra sleeping pad for Brix since he's young to help protect the bottom of the tent and just keep him warm and make him happy on our hikes. Normally, I don't use a sleeping pad during summer backpacking or even really shoulder season backpacking. Usually bring down a cut down pad on winter trips. We've just been using a full length one while he's in training. So just kind of depends on where you're hiking, when you're hiking, and how your dog is. But for us, summer, no pad, winter, cut down pad, puppy, full length pad. As far as sleeping pad brands go, I'm definitely using closed cell foam pads, but really either the Nemo Switchback or the Thermarest Z-Lights both work just fine. They're also easy to cut down to size if that is what you intend to do. I have several of both brands and they work about the same. Lastly, I add some extra items to my first aid kit specifically for the dogs. The first one is vet wrap. It's super helpful because it sticks to itself, not their fur. So it's great to have for emergencies. I've used it on myself sometimes. I also have medical tape, which I guess I would probably carry for myself, but I definitely use it with the dogs. Again, wrapping injuries, that kind of thing. Super glue, again, could be helpful for people, but it's something I've definitely added for the dogs. And then dog-specific medication like carprofen. I have a whole bunch of carprofen from Prima. Of course, I need to check with the vet before I gave that, but it's something I bring along, or you can ask your vet to give you a prescription to use in the case of emergencies. And in case you don't know, carprofen is just basically a doggy NSAID that you can use to help manage pain. You should never give dogs human medication for pain, just as an FYI. So there is some gear that I would carry anyways, but we share it, and it's definitely essential for hiking with a dog. The first is water bottles. I would carry water bottles anyways, even without the dogs, but I carry extra water bottles and extra bladders to increase my capacity because they just drink a lot of water. Smart water bottles are super lightweight. They are intended to be a single-use plastic, so that's something I might reconsider down the line, but it's something I've been doing for a long time just because they're very lightweight and they're easy to get when they wear out. I've also been using the Platypus 2-liter bladder bags, and I really like those. I'll sometimes use the Sawyer ones that are 1 liter as well. I've never had issues with them breaking from like regular use. They just wear out over time as they get old. I really like those for hiking the desert because the majority of the time I don't need them, but when I do need them, then they fill up pretty large and I can strap them to the outside of my pack or put them on the inside on the top of my pack. But when I'm not using them, they fold down really small and they don't take up much space. Next, I alluded to this, but I do use a trowel. I use the Deuce No. 2 trowel for my dogs to dig cat holes. I use it for myself. those do wear out over time. I discovered my old one got all rounded from using it so much for the dogs. I replaced it with the same one because it's nice and light and easy to use, and yeah, there's not really much of a better option in that department. For a tent, I would definitely add your dogs as an extra person if you have a medium to large size dog. We've been using the Nemo Hornet Osmo 3-person tent just because there's me, my boyfriend, and the 2 dogs, and that has worked quite nicely to have all of that extra room. In the past, I've used my HMG Ultimate Pyramid tent, I've used the Big Agnes Tiger Wall UL2, and those have both worked fine depending on the training level of your dog and what you're looking for. But just having that extra space is really important, I think. And then finally, I do carry an extra rag, just Walmart sewing fabric that you can find that's pre-cut. I'll use the extra rag as both a snot rag, and then in emergency, I can wipe them down with it if it rains, or just, if I need to clean them up before they come in the tent. For through hiking specifically, the only things that I've really been adding these days that are different than a weekend trip is I do bring nail clippers on my through hikes to help keep their nails short. For whatever reason, my dogs just don't grind down their nails as much as I would personally like them to when we're hiking, even when we're hiking a lot of miles. So I do that to help prevent injury. And then if we're hiking in the desert on a through hike, sometimes I'll bring my hiking umbrella. I have the Gossamer Gear Silverlight umbrella. I know there's some smaller ones these days, but I like the coverage that that one offers when I'm using it for shade. That said, it's not really necessary the majority of the time. So in case you haven't noticed, a lot of these pieces of gear are very similar to what I would normally carry hiking on a day hike, like a longer day hike anyways. So really it's not that different than a day hike. You just have to mostly think about feeding and sleeping with your dog. Really, it can be pretty simple. Most of these things are like knockoff or like not super nice, or I've made it myself. You don't have to go buy super expensive gear from like Roughwear or Wilder Dog or any of those companies in order to get out and enjoy spending time in the wilderness with your dogs. I do try to keep it fairly simple to keep my pack light. I do think I've gotten much better at this than the last time I made gear videos after the CDT. My pack is quite a bit smaller, I think, than it once was. However, it would also depend on the season when you're hiking. If you're winter camping or something, then you're just inherently going to have more gear. So that's it. If you guys have any questions specifically about my gear or why I bring it, I'd be happy to answer. If there's pieces of gear that you bring that's different or leave at home, I'd love to know why, but just make sure that you include where you're hiking and the type of dog so that we all kind of have an idea on why it might be different, because that makes a really big difference on what you bring. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.